Hey, I've got a quick question for you. Out of nowhere, after the debate last night, Taylor Swift endorsed Kamala Harris. What do you think?
Well, I actually like Mrs. I actually like Mrs. Mahomes much better, if you want to know the truth. She's a big Trump fan. I was not a Taylor Swift fan. It was just a question of time. She couldn't. You couldn't possibly endorse Biden. You look at Biden, you couldn't possibly endorse him. But she's a very liberal person. She seems to always endorse a Democrat, and she'll probably pay a price for it at the in the marketplace. But no, I like Brittany. I think Brittany's great. Brittany got a lot of news last week. She's a big MAGA fan. That's the one I like much better than Taylor Swift.
Right. Brittany is
Mahomes.
Yeah, they're Mahomes. They're great friends.
The wife of the great quarterback, and he is a great quarterback.
My favorite team from Kansas City.
I think she's terrific.
The Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad, presented by Lazy Boy. What is your strategy for comfort?
I don't want my place and my platform to be used to endorse a candidate or do whatever. Either way, I think my place is to inform people to get registered to vote. It's to inform people to do their own research and then make their best decision for them and their family.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad starts now.
All right, Godfather. Apparently, Michael Shacker has an issue with Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
He wants him to sack up and endorse a candidate. He hates the fact that he's taken the high road and I think a very reasonable approach.
It's
not a chicken road.
It's chicken.
Michael, did you have a problem when Michael Jordan never endorsed a presidential candidate?
I wasn't voting back then. Didn't matter.
You could have still had an opinion.
All right. Well, he's a chicken, too. Okay. I'm never going to his steakhouse ever.
I mean, it's pretty simple where I come out on this. If you're an athlete or movie star or someone who's a public figure, if you want to endorse a candidate and share that with the masses, I don't care. If you want to take the Patrick Mahomes route and say it's not my job to endorse a candidate, but just to tell people to register to vote and go, check out the information yourself, I don't have a problem with that. I don't care either way. Even if you want to come out and say, you know what? I don't care about politics. I'm not going to take part in the election or vote because it doesn't matter to me. I don't have a problem with that.
But, Chad, if your favorite athlete told you how to vote, you'd certainly follow orders and go vote for that. I mean, that's the absurdity of the whole thing. I mean, I don't care who they endorse. That doesn't affect me.
No, it doesn't matter whatsoever. The one thing I do know from studying political science in college is that it's a very complex issue why people vote the way they vote. It's not a simple one answer. There are a multitude of reasons for why people choose to vote the way they vote. And it's not something that's easily explained. So you're right. An endorsement or someone coming out and saying, I'm going to vote for this candidate and you should do the same, I don't think that has much of an impact on other people.
Well, there are people who will tell you that a lot of it is simply looks, their appearance, their charisma, the way they talk, nothing that has to do with their policies or anything else.
Yeah. And I think the number one issue for voters year after year after year is always economic. It's the economy.
Yeah.
And the frustrating part about these debates, they don't talk about the economy.
They both change the subject a lot.
Yeah.
From the questions they were asked.
Yeah. Yeah, it is what it is. But Patrick Mahomes, if he wants to take the high road and choose that path, I'm perfectly okay with it.
Yeah.
I just care about him showing up on Sundays and balling out because I love watching him play football. He's phenomenal.
Of course.
Love Patrick Mahomes. And you know what? If his wife wants to support people or Trump or whoever she wants on social media, I don't care about that either. That's her right to be able to choose to do that.
Now, it's an interesting conversation, though. I don't think Brittany Mahomes, I'm not sure she swung a lot of votes with her endorsement. But there is some question about whether or not Taylor Swift has moved a block of voters with her endorsement because her fans are such followers and they're legion.
My guess is most of her followers probably were feeling the same direction that she was.
Anyway, right.
Yeah. Maybe what she can do is inspire a few people who were just going to sit this one out to get out and vote. But in terms of changing votes, no. But encouraging people to get out and cast a vote, maybe, but doubtful. Because, again, even though Taylor Swift has influence, most people vote the way they vote for many different reasons and are not going to be impacted by what Taylor says. That'd be my guess.
And Chad, I thought most people by last night's debate had long already decided who they were going to vote
Well, of
for.
course, but
I
based
don't
on
think, not many minds were changed off last night.
based on the numbers that came out from the debate in terms of being available on basically every channel, more people care about watching football than they do the debate. That's what it comes down to. Football's king. And that's where I want to start with you, Godfather. I'm going to give you a few teams, I think 4 to be precise. And these are teams that through the first week of the NFL season or the first couple of weeks of college have underachieved. And so what I want to ask you is, of the teams that I give you, which team do you have the most confidence in to be able to turn it around and get to that level that we expect from them?
All right.
All right, so let me give you some teams. The Green Bay Packers, who got beat down in an ugly performance down in Brazil by the Philadelphia Eagles in week 1, and unfortunately lost Jordan Love for 3 to 6 weeks. Malik Willis is going to take over. So the Packers,
Good luck with that.
in the preseason, considered to be a Super Bowl contender with the way they played down the stretch last year. Going to be a rough stretch over the next few weeks without Jordan Love in the lineup. Also, they didn't look particularly good on defense in that opener either.
Yeah.
The New York Jets, again, another team in the preseason considered to be a contender in the AFC East, in the AFC. And if everything broke right, potentially with the return of Rodgers getting to the Super Bowl, they got beat down by the 49ers on Monday Night Football. And probably the most discouraging aspect of that game, if you're a Jets fan, is the way the defense got shredded by Kyle Shanahan in that running game, the zone scheme, without Christian McCaffrey on the field. So we've got the Packers, the Jets, the Cincinnati Bengals, who I think put up the biggest stinker of all teams week 1 NFL with the way that they played at home against the New England Patriots, probably the worst team in football. They scored 10 points. They couldn't get it done in the fourth quarter. Joe Burrow was off his game. They looked out of sorts, and I got to give the credit to Gerard Mayo and his group because they played physical, tough, hard-nosed defense and really put a lot of pressure on Burrow. So you've got the Bengals at 0-1, and then we finish up with the Oregon Ducks. Oregon, 2-0. They've beaten Idaho, and then they took out Boise, but those games much closer than what the spread said it should be. And I think when people look at the way Oregon has played over the first 2 weeks, very concerned because going into the year, number 3 team ranked in the country, considered to be an absolute national title contender and a team that would really push forward to the playoff without question. And now all of a sudden, offensive line issues, lack of a running game, out of whack on offense with Dylan Gabriel putting up 40 to 50 passes a game, and the defense, while good, not quite as dominant as people thought. So those are your teams: Oregon, the Cincinnati Bengals, New York Jets, or the Green Bay Packers. Of that group, which team do you have the most confidence in to rebound rather quickly and get back on track based on expectation level?
Okay, first, I'm going to eliminate the Packers because they lost their quarterback for 4 to 6 weeks, which is going to lead to at least 3 losses and probably 4 to 6 losses with Malik Willis taking. I'm sorry, I have no confidence in him at all from what I've seen before. I think there's natural ability there, but he didn't. Last time I saw him, he wasn't ready to play quarterback in the NFL.
I agree with that.
Okay, so I'm just going to push them aside and get down to 3. I think the Jets will be better because they have Aaron Rodgers. And once he gets past the first game or 2, or maybe he'll need 3 or 4 weeks, they'll be better. Now, how much better? No, I don't think they're a Super Bowl threat, but I think they'll be better. But that leads me to the Ducks and the Bengals. Now, the one thing about the Bengals is they have had, let me just say, they've trended poorly in their opening games the last few years.
Yeah, under Zach Taylor, not great through the first couple of weeks. They're a team that gets it going a little bit later in the season, and they got Joe Burrow.
People tell me they get going because they run a soft camp, and that's what I've heard is that his camp is very soft. Okay, they do have
soft, meaning not a lot of physicality, right?
They're not hitting a lot. They're not really ready for tough physical football, but they have Joe Burrow. And that would lead you to believe this stuff's not going to last long unless Joe Burrow isn't 100% healthy. But I think in that game, he didn't play well, but I don't think he looked hurt either.
Yeah.
I don't think there was any sign of that.
I think it was the Patriots' defense that created a lot of issue for him.
Right. So I guess I think the Ducks will be okay. They have a good quarterback. They don't have Joe Burrow at quarterback, but for the college game, they've got about as good a quarterback as you're going to have. You know, there's a couple guys better, obviously, but maybe Sanders and Ewers are pretty good. But
I think you're splitting hairs at that point. I think Gabriel
Yeah.
is right there in the top tier in terms of college quarterbacks.
okay. What I've seen so far doesn't lead me to believe they're going to be in the national title picture. Playoff team, yeah, I think that's still within the realm of possibility.
Well, if you're a
Yeah.
playoff team, you're in the national championship picture, aren't you?
Well, no, but there's teams that are going to be in the playoffs that aren't going to win the national championship.
Well, I agree with that. But if Oregon gets in with their overall talent base, I mean, you would think, I mean, if you're in the playoff, you're in contention for a national title.
Okay.
I
So
mean,
if Utah gets in, are they?
yeah, absolutely. With their coach and their
Yeah.
senior leadership coming back and an experienced quarterback, yeah, and their defense, yeah, I think Utah, would they be favored? No. Would the
No.
Ducks be favored? No. I think there are really two teams right now, three teams, Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, not particularly in that order. I think those three teams would be the odds-on favorite, but
Right.
you got to get to the playoff to be a national title contender. Here's what I think about the Ducks right now. I have no idea what to expect coming up on Saturday with Oregon and Oregon State. It's too early in the season to really get a feel for what Oregon State's all about. And with Oregon, they have so many issues up on the offensive front. And we'll talk to Justin Hopkins at 4:20 to see what that's going to look like this Saturday. If they continue to have the offensive line issues that we see right now, which I don't think they will, but if it continues, then all of a sudden Ohio State becomes a serious problem because of their stoutness up front. And then you look at some of the road games like Michigan and or Wisconsin. There's all of a sudden games now with the weak offensive line play where they could stumble in
Yeah.
that we did not think so before the season. So that would be a concern there. Obviously, I give the edge to the Bengals because they got Joe Burrow. And next to Patrick Mahomes, he's the best quarterback in the NFL. But I think Oregon's got time. It's just a matter of solving the issues up front. And that's going to be the big question. And the other thing I want to ask Hopkins at 4:20 when he joins us is, why the lack of quality depth up front on the offensive line? What took place there to have that happen to where they're in a situation where they're playing musical chairs? That's not where you want to be. My guess is they get Bedford back at some point. It helps to ease the musical chairs that they're playing up front, and then they can start to develop more continuity. And the good thing is they still have a few weeks before they got to play Ohio State. Thank God. Give them some time to sort some issues out there. But if they were playing Ohio State tomorrow, I would think they would be in big trouble.
Yeah.
Right?
They're not quite ready for them.
No. Even Oregon State with their defense and the way they're playing sound, if Oregon doesn't have their horses up front and they continue to struggle to pass block and run block, they're going to have some issues in that game.
Yeah, see, you kind of thought Oregon would bust out last week. I think this is the week they will. I'll be the guy to go on record and say I think
And when you say bust out, you're talking about, what are they, a 16-point favorite? They'll cover the spread
They'll
and start
cover-
to look more of what we expected.
they'll cover, I think, with ease. Yeah, I think it could be upwards of 20 would be what I would say. I just think there's a big talent gap.
All right, yesterday we took a look at the Oregon State side of things with Brendan Slaughter and Mike Parker. Today, Justin Hopkins of Scoop Duck, he'll come on and share a great story between his son and Dame at Washington Square, and then we'll dive into the Ducks, talk about the offensive line and what he's seen through 2 weeks. And then Aaron Fentress, he's not high on the Ducks right now either through 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
From the Oregonian, Aaron Fentress will join the show at 5:20. We'll come back, and we're going to focus in on some football. You might be surprised at the 2 highest-rated quarterbacks in Week 1, and also the 49ers look great in Week 1, but they better be careful on how they deal with Christian McCaffrey. We'll explain that. And we're also going to hear from Josh Allen, this big matchup against Miami coming up on Thursday. I hate that they take a game of that magnitude and how important that game is for division supremacy. Tiebreakers towards the end of the season, and they put it on a Thursday night early in the season when both teams are not at their best.
Makes no sense.
It's a big game for tiebreak purposes in a very competitive division that they're putting on a Thursday night.
Yeah.
Not a fan of that, Godfather.
Yeah, particularly this early in the year, right?
No, the offenses are behind the defenses. We could see some more ugly football in terms of overall offensive play this weekend.
I think we're seeing that in college too, aren't we? Where the defenses are ahead of the offenses.
I agree with that too. We'll get to that next. You got the Rip City Drive at Dwight and Chad. All right, this is a crazy stat coming out of week 1 of the NFL, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But Duke, the UPS driver, chimed in regards to Oregon. He thinks they're playing possum right now.
Really?
And you think there's some credence to that, right? And
I think, yeah, in spite of what people might say, I think they've been holding part of their offense back.
well, how reasonable is it to you look at their schedule? They got Oregon State coming up this weekend. They've got UCLA. They've got some winnable games on tap. Michigan State before they get to the Ohio State game. Is it reasonable to think that a coaching staff, knowing what's ahead, Ohio State, the most important game of the season on their schedule at home, that they would sit on a lot of things throughout the first month of the season before they get to that game? Is that reasonable?
Yeah, I don't know how reasonable. Here's what I think, though, coaches do, is they put that money in the bank, okay? They put those plays in the bank. They've got those for safekeeping. But if things get dire, they run to the bank real fast and pull a couple out.
Well, haven't they already gotten Dyer?
Well,
You need 2 special teams touchdowns to beat Boise. That would be, in my definition, pretty dire.
yeah, but I think they did change a little bit in both of the games in the fourth quarter. I think they did some things they hadn't done before. And I think, like in the first game, they threw the ball deep. I don't know that they wanted to, but they did. And same thing in the second game. They did a little more of that than they probably wanted. Then they got the special teams touchdowns. It's like, okay, we're going to win this game, and we're going to be okay. I think they also felt they could lose that game, but if they beat Ohio State, they're still good.
Yeah, that's probably true, too. Again, we are conditioned to worry about every loss
Right.
because of the way that it's been for so long. This year is totally different.
And it's hard to get over that.
Yes.
It's hard to get over that.
You can lose to Boise when Ohio State's on your schedule, and you
Yeah.
have to go to Michigan, and
Right.
you have to go to Wisconsin,
And
and
you
you're
have
playing a Big Ten championship game.
And you have Ohio State at home.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal, too, I think.
So it also could be possible that we just overvalued the Ducks. They had a lot of turnover. No Bo
Absolutely.
Nix. You got Dylan Gabriel coming in, and maybe the offensive line play is just not what we thought it was going to be. It is possible that we just, not just us, but everyone just overvalued them.
See, here's the thing on that, Chad, that I look at is we're valuing them pretty high based on people who weren't in their program last year.
Yeah.
It's not like they had 21 starters coming back out of 22 or something like that, where we knew they had veteran players in the system who were coming back. That's a lot better than saying, well, we got all these 5 stars. We got 2 terrific transfers. Because they are kind of putting this team together on the fly. And when you do that, it probably takes a little longer.
Yeah.
If it goes together at all, because you never know. Look at the problems Colorado has had. I don't think they're total dum-dums. They've gone out and gotten pretty good players out of the portal. But for some reason, they haven't gelled this year, and they didn't gel last year.
And just because Dylan Gabriel lights it up at Oklahoma with offensive coordinator Jeff Levy, who went on to be the head coach at Mississippi State, doesn't mean it's going to click exactly the same with Will Stein in Oregon.
That's right.
So we'll see how things continue to play out. But, yeah, they could be. And I think we agree with you, Duke, that the Ducks, because of who's coming up on the schedule, are holding some stuff back. I mean, you'd be a fool to show your hand. Why would you do that?
There's no reason to open your playbook entirely for the first 2 teams they played. And I think they'll look at each of these teams different than we will. I mean, they're looking at Oregon State probably differently than we are. They know so much more about them.
Yeah.
They know what they're going to do against them
Yeah.
and what they can do and not do.
Here's what I love about the 12-team playoff, and I've told you this before. I never liked that teams had to be basically undefeated to get to a national championship game. I just don't think that's a reasonable expectation. Teams are going to have issues. They have injuries. Maybe they don't click until later in the season, or you play a huge game one week and the next week you have an emotional letdown because you're dealing with kids. That's quite possible too.
Well, and some teams come from much weaker conferences than other teams do and
question.
have much weaker schedules in terms of who they play non-conference.
I agree.
So that's really hard.
Yeah, the pathway that Miami's got is not the same that Georgia or Oregon has.
Absolutely.
Because they're coming from a weak conference. Now, what I like about the way it's set up now is that I'm a big believer that as the season goes along, the really good teams continue to get better, and they try to peak right at the right time, like we see with Georgia, Alabama, and some of the great teams, Ohio State. So for Oregon, I'm not worried about how they look today. I'm more concerned about how they continue to grow as a football team and what they look like against Ohio State and further down the road in conference play on the road. And will they be able to get themselves into the Big Ten championship game? So I'm not worried about what they look like in week 1 or week 2, but what do they look like at the end of the year when it really matters?
Yeah,
A team should be allowed to develop and grow and develop that chemistry that you were talking about.
Yeah, the best Oregon State team in most people's lifetime around here right now was the Dennis Erickson team.
Yeah, 2000.
Yeah, well, it's easy to forget the idea that they should have probably lost to Eastern Washington that year at home. Eastern had them on the ropes in that game.
That's right. But they got better as they got deeper into the season.
Much better.
Yeah. So
And they had transfers too. Don't forget, a big part of that team was Dennis went out and got some pretty good JUCO guys. That's real good JUCO guys. Like Chad Johnson was one of them.
I want to know what the NIL program was like back then for Oregon State. Probably pretty legit.
Yeah, I think probably if you took a tour through that parking lot, you probably saw some cars you weren't driving.
All right, we'll focus in on the Ducks. Justin Hopkins of Scoop Duck. He'll come on the show today at 4:20, and then we're going to talk with Aaron Finchers of the Oregonian at 5:20. He wants to share his thoughts on the Ducks. He has not been overly impressed through 2 weeks, which is understandable, so we'll talk to those two. All right, the top 2 rated quarterbacks in the NFL in week 1, it was not Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes, but the top 2 were Brock Purdy and Sam Darnold from Minnesota. And the Vikings dominated the Giants. The 49ers ripped the Jets on Monday Night Football. And the interesting part about those two guys is they get a chance to match up this weekend when San Francisco travels to Minnesota. Now, keep in mind, it was a night game last year that San Francisco went in and lost at Minnesota.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a good early test for the 49ers to see where they're at. So I'm looking forward to that. And props to Sam Darnold. You and I talked about this before the year began, where he's got a unique opportunity, much like we've seen with Geno Smith or Baker Mayfield or Vinny Testaverde, these quarterbacks who were drafted high. They have a falling out with their original team, but continue to work and grind and then eventually get the perfect opportunity to showcase what they can do. And it usually is a matter of getting with the right coach and the right opportunity. And then you play well, and then all of a sudden, boom, you get a chance to start again. We saw it with Baker Mayfield. He got a rehab assignment with the Rams, got Sean McVay to say some good things about him, goes to Tampa, has a great year last year. He comes out, goes 4 touchdowns, no picks in week 1, which is impressive. Vinny Testaverde, drafted by the Buccaneers, highly touted coming out of Miami, fell flat on his face with the Bucs, winds up in Baltimore with Ted Marchibroda, rehabs his image, plays well, and then before you know it, he's in the AFC title game with Bill Parcells and the Jets. And we see this around the league. Geno Smith had a falling out with the Jets.
Yeah.
Terrible situation, but continued to work, was a backup, then got the opportunity to fill in for us in Seattle. And then when the trade was made, Geno Smith was elevated to starter, got a new contract, and he's played very good football, even got the Hawks to the playoffs a couple of years ago in that role. Sam Darnold, drafted by the Jets, has a falling out, winds up in a bad spot in Carolina, but all of a sudden, Kyle Shanahan, one of the geniuses, shows interest.
That didn't hurt him at all right there. That year he played as a backup.
Because what happens is, right, Dwight, if Kyle Shanahan suddenly has interest in a guy, well, why don't we have interest in this guy? Because he's an offensive genius.
Right.
And now, look, he's got a chance to play well because he knows what's going to happen in Minnesota. J.J. McCarthy is eventually going to be handed the keys to the franchise because they drafted him in the first round at quarterback. No problem. Darnold now knows that J.J. McCarthy's not going to play this year because they're shutting him down with the knee injury. He's got the full season to show what he can do. And if he plays well, guess what? He's going to wind up in a different spot with a brand new contract with a chance to start. That's a pretty sweet opportunity for a guy like Darnold that had that falling out with the Jets.
Well, especially, too, with an offensive coach,
Yeah.
offensive head coach, who runs a similar system probably to what they were running in San Francisco, which he had a whole year to sit there and watch from the sidelines.
Well, you respect O'Connell, don't you? Yeah, he's good.
Absolutely. I respect him in a lot of different ways, too. I love the way he deals with the media. This guy's got a personality, you know, and he doesn't look down his nose at the media or the fans or anybody else. I think he's a level-headed guy who's going to be a really good head coach.
All right. The 49ers, they got an issue. Christian McCaffrey, he's dealing with ankle and Achilles issues, injuries. And I think the Achilles, what is it, a tendonitis?
It's Achilles tendonitis.
Okay.
Yes.
And what happens to a lot of athletes that try to play through Achilles tendonitis?
Well, they hear a loud popping sound at some
Yes.
point.
Yeah, we've seen it with Rodney Hood. We've seen it with other athletes where they continue to try to play through it, and then you get the rupture, and before you know it, your season's over, and you're getting reconstructive surgery on the Achilles.
Right. Not an injury you want to get as an athlete.
Here's how I would handle this if I were the 49ers. It's a unique situation because Kyle Shanahan, just like he proved on Monday night, it doesn't matter which running back they have back there. He's going to be able to produce the ground game necessary to run the play action and the boots for Brock Purdy. Christian McCaffrey is much more important to them later in the year, especially come postseason time, because of his unique skill set. They can use him in special teams. They can use him in the passing game. They can use him in the running game. He's Johnny on the spot. Let him take as much time that is necessary to make sure that his body is 100% right so you don't put him in too soon and risk massive injury to that Achilles.
There's no need to push him at all to
No.
come back. Could be 2 months. That would still be fine.
Yes, this is the advantage of having a roster littered with incredible skill position players, whether it's Ayuk or it's Kittle or it's Debo Samuel. I mean, you can use Debo in the backfield.
Mm-hmm.
They can mix it up. I would just let Christian take as much time as necessary. I know it's going to kill him because he's a football junkie and he wants to play, but I just don't think the 49ers, who have one goal in mind this year to win a championship, why risk it? Just let him rest.
Yeah.
Let them rest. And what coaches are doing more so now today than they have in the past is rely on the medical staff. Let them, don't put pressure on them. Let them tell you when they're 100% certain that it's good for him to come back.
Yeah, and you might have to go outside your medical staff and find the very best Achilles guy in the country and say, what can we do? Are there rehab things we can be doing now? Everything. You got to know the full story on what that is. He's that valuable to your team. You can't afford him to snap that.
I agree. I was listening to Mike Golick this morning, former Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and played in the NFL for many years. In fact, he was part of that great Eagles defense in the 80s and 90s. He said that back in the day when he was playing, that it was much easier. I think the question he was asked is, what's the fine line between being hurt or being injured, right? And he said it's kind of a gray area. But he said it was very easy as a player back then to go to a doctor, one of the team doctors, and say, hey, it's not that bad. Can you shoot me up? And he would get a needle for an ankle, or maybe it was an elbow, or it was this, or he said he separated some rib cartilage and he kept getting that area shot up. And he said it was amazing because you get shot up and you don't feel a thing. Like someone could come up and just whack you with a baseball bat on the ribs. You wouldn't feel it. He said the issue came after the game when the shot would wear off and then the pain would come in. And he said you'd have to take the pain pills. And he goes, that would lead often to opioid issues for some of the players.
Addiction, yeah.
So he said what's happening now is that coaches are doing a much better job of trying to stay farther away from the medical decisions, letting the doctors handle it. And therefore, it's much more difficult for players now, or a guy like Christian McCaffrey, to roll up on a doctor and say, hey, I'm fine. Just give me a little shot and we'll be good to go. The doctors, it's not perfect, but they're getting better at truly taking the best interest of the player and the team long term instead of just trying to give him a shot, do this, do that, get the guy back on the field, even if you're putting him at risk.
Yeah, those pain-killing shots, too, are a real danger in a sense that, and I go all the way back to Bill Walton with his foot problems.
Yep.
The big issue was a painkiller in his feet. Those small bones in your feet, he had no pain. That was the problem because you don't know how bad it's getting. You could break a bone in there and not even feel it until the painkiller wears off. And that's the problem with those things is you could do damage, especially to weight-bearing bones, muscles that are stretched. It's just something you got to be very, very careful with.
Yeah, McCaffrey's just too valuable.
You can't do it. You can't do it. Plus, running backs. Come on now. Running backs. Just go get a running back. Running backs are us. Run down to the corner and grab a running back.
Can they win a championship without McCaffrey?
Yeah, I think they could because they have enough other things going on. Yeah. I don't – it will be harder. Obviously, it'll be harder. But, yeah, they could.
I'm of the opinion that McCaffrey is overvalued to a degree, not because I don't love the guy, I do. I just think that in that system, and again, I'm conditioned because I grew up with Mike Shanahan, I just think he can plug in many different backs and get big-time production from that position. Christian McCaffrey is going to do it better than most guys because he's a tremendous receiver. He's great in pass protection when he needs to be. He knows how to run and has good vision. He's a higher level running back, there's no question, but in that zone scheme and the way they block it, especially with the receivers involved in the blocking game, there are many guys who can get off. That's an advantage of having Kyle Shanahan as coach.
Yeah.
Not every coach can get away with that. Some coaches' running game is not Kyle Shanahan's running game, and they need the better running back.
I just think there are running backs. Honestly, I look at what Bucky Irving did with Tampa Bay last weekend. He had a terrific game. I mean, they were chanting Bucky Irving during the game because he popped a long run. He had, 12 carries, 69 yards, something like that. He was really good. I thought he was a really good running back at Oregon. Did I think he was going to pop in the NFL? No, I didn't really. He's not a big guy. He's not really a power guy. He takes hits pretty well. He's tough. For a guy his size, he got through seasons without major injuries. But I thought, wow, if Bucky Irving is this good in the NFL, there's guys walking around that are pretty good running backs that could probably help these teams.
He's kind of got that Jonte thing going on where he's got the lower center of gravity.
He does.
Good balance, good feet, but he's got
Strong.
speed too.
Yeah,
He can
does.
accelerate. Man, Baker Mayfield looked awesome.
Oh, gosh.
And I like Baker. I always have.
Yeah, well, and he's got the great leadership, too. I think players really gravitate toward him.
He's matured.
Yeah. That's funny, though.
I just love that Cleveland
Yeah.
tossed him to the curb. The Browns did him dirty. He injured the shoulder, tried to play through it
Mm-hmm.
because he was trying to be a guy for the team,
Mm-hmm.
didn't play well, and then they punk him on the contract extension, and they move on. And then sign the worst contract in the history of the NFL with Deshaun Watson, the perv, and now they wish they could get out of that contract, and they can't.
Yeah.
And Baker Mayfield is flourishing down in Tampa. It's pretty awesome. That's a great story right there.
Fantastic. He never lost confidence in himself.
That's one thing that you can take to the bank. If the Browns don't want you, you're probably an all-star.
Yeah.
If the Browns think you suck, it means you're great.
Yeah.
If the Haslam family says this, go the opposite direction. Okay, we'll keep things rolling here on the Rip City Drive. Dwight and Chad with you. Justin Hopkins is going to join us coming up at 4:20 as we focus in on the Ducks. And when we come back, a quick take on the Trailblazers and their tank season before we hear from Josh Allen. You got the Rip City Drive from Dwight and Chad. I like it. Michael Shacker's very feisty today, Godfather. Our producer's a very feisty man.
He can get that way. Yeah, I don't know what triggers that, but
I like it, though. I like Shacker because he didn't receive any favors of any sorts to get his way to where he's at today. And I respect that. Nice work, Shacker.
Oh, I'm still mad at Mahomes.
he has come
Thanks for
from
nothing,
the very
guy.
bottom. I saw him when he started off.
Is he
That
too
kid didn't
embarrassed to
know
admit
what
he's
was
supporting
going on.
Trump? Is
All
that
right.
what's going on here?
Shacker, I'm going to let you do it right now. Who are you endorsing for president, Shacker?
Well, with what's in front of us,
For all you people,
we have
not
to go
knowing who to vote for.
with Vice President Harris. Can't go with Trump. No one should be voting for Trump. He's despicable. Everyone should feel ashamed for themselves if they support Trump,
All right.
wherever you live,
Here's-
whatever state. If you're a swing state or a state that Trump's not going to get the electoral votes.
Okay, here's what I want between now and the election. I need to know, with the statement that you just made, how many people in the state of Oregon will go out and register to vote now that Shacker has officially endorsed his candidate? I need to know that information.
Do I need to?
I want to see if we have more influence than,
Taylor Swift.
yeah. I want to see if you got some
But I'll
Swifty
just
power.
say, tell people go to Taylor Swift's post and link there, and then she'll get all the credit. I want her to get all the credit.
You want Taylor to get the credit? You
Yeah.
don't like her. Do you like Taylor?
No, I don't like her music.
He doesn't think Taylor's hot either. You think she's overrated.
Yeah, she's overrated. She looks average.
Wow.
But she owns cats, so she's cool in that department.
That's right. You're an animal lover.
Yeah.
All right. That's Michael Shacker.
If you need him.
We have a big football game coming up on Thursday. It's too bad the NFL's got to put such a great game on a Thursday, so we're guaranteed of subpar product. But Josh Allen, quarterback for the Bills, talking about the matchup this weekend with the Dolphins.
I think that's what we want to see, is making sure that different guys are getting different touches, and that means guys are in different spots, but at the same time doing their job, getting open, catching the ball. But in terms of operation, we had a bunch of false starts, and got to clean that up. Got to clean up some of the penalties. Again, getting the play call in as quickly as possible, especially on the road, and me getting that out to the team and making adjustments in a timely manner. So it all goes hand in hand, and it takes 11 guys out there to produce a really good product, and that's what we're trying to do.
Josh Allen's one of those smart guys, Godfather. I love to listen to him talk. I think he's got a good feel for his team. And you like the fact that the Dolphins went out and brought in Jordan Poyer to get intel on Buffalo, don't you?
I think it's a pretty smart move. Plus, I'm sure Jordan's got another year or two good left in him. He's been a really good player for a long, long time. He spent a long time with Buffalo, and he definitely knows what they do. Now, they'll change terminology. They'll change audibles. They'll do a lot of things, probably a few designed to confuse him, but it will be interesting to see if he has an impact on the game.
Miami's a 2.5-point favorite at home against Buffalo on Thursday night.
Makes sense.
Of course, those two teams played at the end of last year. Buffalo went into Miami, got the win, and came all the way back, won the division, and then Miami faltered down the stretch, lost that game, winded up as a wild card team. And what happens when you wind up as a wild card team? You're on the road in Kansas City in cold weather getting your butt kicked.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Nice work, Miami. I'm anxious to see the game, though. I thought the Dolphins, after that slow start against Jacksonville, nutted up in the second half and got the job done. They've got big-time playmakers like Tyreek. And then Buffalo, I think, is super legit. That division between those two, primarily, and I guess you can throw in the Jets. The AFC East is going to be fun throughout the course of the year.
Yeah, I think I like Miami a lot more at the start of the season when it's nice and warm in Miami and they're playing at home. I don't like them late in the season playing on the road in Buffalo or New York or any of those, New England.
No, never trust a warm weather team in cold weather.
Yeah, they can't get it done.
No, and I'd be the same way. If I lived in Arizona, I'd be soft too, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, I want to ask you about this. This is Coach Thorpe from True Hoop, who put out his projections for the NBA Tank Brigade. That's how he titled it. And he's got multiple teams: Nets, Wizards, Bulls, Pistons, the Utah Jazz, your Portland Trailblazers, and the San Antonio Spurs. How the Spurs are still on the Tankathon watch with freaking one of the best players in the world is just beyond my understanding.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what Pop is doing, but I guess he can do whatever he wants. But he's got the Blazers finishing with 30 wins this year. I mean, Godfather.
That's not much of a tank season.
If they finish with 30 wins, that would be a catastrophic disaster based on where they're at and what they need. we've talked about it. Next year's draft in the NBA is one of the most important drafts, and so rich in talent that you simply have to do whatever it takes to make sure you're squarely in a position to get Cooper Flagg or one of the top players in that draft. 30 wins is not going to get the job done. 30 wins will not put you in the bottom 3, which gives you an equal shot at the top pick in the draft.
No, you got to get down where you get one of the top 3 or 4 players. Cooper Flagg is obviously the grand prize, but there are several players, and even David Thorpe mentions them in this story. And he mentions a couple that I hadn't even followed, Dylan Harper and VJ Edgecombe, which you're not hearing their names as much as a few other names. So there's obviously 4 or 5 really good players in this draft.
All right. So I'm assuming that he's looking at the roster the way you and I are. You've got DeAndre Ayton, Jeremy Grant, Anthony Simons, and other vets, Matisse Thybulle. It's hard to see how the plan is to veer off into the lottery and be one of the bottom 3 teams when you've got so many veteran players. Is that what he's doing? He's looking at the roster and saying if they go out and try to win games with that veteran group, they might be able to scratch out 30 wins.
I think that's what he's doing. He's taking everybody's roster as they sit right now without any trades or anything else, any injuries, and thinking that they're going to try to win. That's what it seems like. Here's his first paragraph, Chad. I love 4 of the Blazers starters. Anthony Simons is a pure scorer. Jeremy Grant is everyone's favorite grinder. DeAndre Ayton is a solid young center. Excuse me. Danny Avdija is turning into a 3-and-D wing that every team covets. Then he gets into Scoot Henderson, who he's not a fan of, and apparently saw him this summer in L.A. and didn't like what he saw.
What's his take on Scoot Henderson?
Okay. He said he was the most disappointing player I saw in L.A. this summer. Despite his unreal athleticism, Henderson is a horrendous defensive player who can't shoot and can't finish at the rim. He's nowhere near ready to help the Blazers win possessions. If he commits to and succeeds in improving his overall game, he can make a big jump playing alongside guys who know how. But there needs to be some improvement towards the light. If Scoot hasn't started making real progress by February, it's a 5-alarm fire. No team gets too far with a negative player starting at point guard. See, I just don't think all those players that he mentioned that he likes are going to be on the team, or at least playing an active role. Because they probably would win 30 games. If all those guys are playing, all of them are healthy, they're going to win way too many games to do any kind of tank.
No one in this town that's close to the team and covers the team believes that they're going to win 30 games.
Yeah.
Because that's not the plan. The franchise will make sure that doesn't happen. I'm convinced of it.
Yeah.
And they know it. And we endorse that.
Yeah.
You don't want to win 30. You want to win as few games as possible. And that means that, we're probably going to see some maneuvers.
Pretty much have to. You can't turn those. And the one thing you can't do, you can't tell players, oh, we're tanking. Don't play as well. That's not what happens.
No one's ever said that to any player.
That doesn't work.
No. The way you handle that job is to make the roster with players who are available who can't play that well, who don't have experience.
Yeah.
The other problem is they got a coach that probably wants to win games.
They do.
That's a conflict of interest.
And when you have that situation, you have to take the players away from him because he will use them. So you have to move them usually.
All right, we'll keep things rolling. Justin Hopkins coming up at 4:20. Hey, Shacker, naughty girls need love too, my friend. All right, it's now 4 o'clock chat here. The Dolphins and Patriots meet tomorrow night. Thursday Night Football on Prime Video from Miami. Kickoff is at 5:15. Miami is favored by 2.5. Bengals looking to rebound after their Week 1 loss at home to New England. They'll play at Kansas City Sunday. Kickoff at 1:25. Joe Burrow says his wrist is not impacting any of his throws. Oregon and Oregon State from Corvallis on Saturday. Kickoff from Research Stadium, 12:30. Pregame at 10:30. It's on your home of the Beavs, 1190 KEX, with Mike Parker handling the call. We're going to talk with Aaron Fentress, Oregonian, at 5:20. Justin Hopkin, our good friend in Scoop Duck, will stop by in 20 minutes at 4:20. The Mariners start today's action, 4.5 games back in the West. They meet the Padres tonight. First pitch at 6:40. Brian Wu gets the call. The Astros have dropped back-to-back games. They host the A's. Come on, Ray, be better. All right, Godfather, I got to be honest with you. I was thinking about just how time has gone by. Today, of course, is the anniversary of the September 11th attacks on our country. I can't believe it's been 23 years.
It's amazing.
23 years ago.
What a terrifying day that was. Whew.
Where were you at when that went down?
I was actually at home on the houseboat. I got a call from a friend. All he said was, turn on the TV. I said, what? Just turn on the TV. So I did and sat there spellbound.
I was in bed in the morning. I was still in college, so I was getting ready to get up and head over to the Washington State campus to go to class. And then all of a sudden, my phone started blowing up, and I got a call from a couple of friends. And I did the same thing. I went in and turned on the TV and just, jaw dropped, trying to absorb what I was witnessing. It was unbelievable. And then shortly thereafter, we got word that classes had been canceled.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spent the rest of the day just in front of the television. That night, I was supposed to go down to Spirit Mountain Casino with my buddy Steve. We had tickets for a Chicago concert, and they were going to be down at Spirit Mountain that night. And so I had gone over to his place in Vancouver, and we watched television on the news and everything that was going down. And then we got in our car, and we were getting ready to head down to Spirit Mountain. And his roommate at the time, Dwayne, called us and said, hey, I just saw the news flash that Chicago canceled the concert. So
Yeah.
we turned around and went back to his place and continued to watch the news and absorb everything that had gone down. But I'd never seen anything quite like that. I mean, in my lifetime, the only thing that had compared to the images and, the heartache was the Challenger disaster.
Oh, that was terrible, too. Ooh.
That was the worst I had been through.
Yeah.
And then 9/11 was, and still is to this day, the worst thing I've witnessed with my own eyes. Just blown away. In fact, I went through a couple of weeks ago, I got stuck in one of my YouTube modes, and I watched a bunch of different videos. And it came from the fact that I was in New York this summer for the Yankees and Dodgers series, and I went back to the Memorial.
Yeah.
And my first trip to New York was the one that you and I took together. I met you and Nancy out there. 2017, we went out for the Classic East concert, but we met in New York City right there at Times Square. We went to a Yankee game. Then we went to the concert that night at Citi Field. And the next morning, we got up and we met in downtown at the Memorial.
Yeah.
And that was the last thing that we did before we, went our separate ways to head back home. And I didn't know what to expect going in. Like, I knew it was supposed to be really well done, but
You expected it would be an emotional experience, I'm sure.
yes, but
Yeah.
not quite as emotional
Right.
as it turned out to be.
Yeah.
And, the way they've got it set up is that it's several levels, and they've got it set up with, all these different rooms with pictures and the stories behind the people that died,
Artifacts.
destroyed full-sized fire engines, police cars.
Yeah.
The way they've set up the memorial is they built it on, basically inside of one of the, I don't know what you call it, but one of the holes that the foundation that the other building was set up on. So you can see some of the stairs from the old building and so forth.
Yeah.
And so I felt this weight as I was walking through it. And then they had one portion of the memorial that was dedicated to the jumpers who were choosing to jump out of one of the towers to die so they wouldn't melt or be burned. And that's when it started to become very difficult to absorb. Very difficult, Godfather. And I remember you just looking at me and saying, hey, I got to get out of here. That's what you told me. Not because you didn't want to sit there and honor those who had died, but because it was just too much.
Yeah, the grief is, when you think back to that day too, it's like we're going to be at war here. This is an act of war.
Yeah, you knew that was coming. When I went back this last time, I took even longer to go through because, we were kind of rushed when you and I were there in 2017.
You had a plane to catch.
I had a plane to catch.
Yeah.
But this time when I went, I had all day. So I spent probably about 3 to 4 hours in there just taking my time going through. And what I did is they've got a couple of rooms where you can sit down, and it's like a video room, like a mini, I don't know what you call it, like a theater. I watched one little short film they had on the tugboat drivers in there in the Hudson or in the water, who they rushed in and they put out the emergency call. So all these guys on boats, they went over to Manhattan to pick up people who were stranded on the island because all the roads have been shut down.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a video to honor, the guys on the water who saved all those people and got them to safety, which is pretty amazing. And then I sat in one of the rooms, and what they do that's really nice is that they just go from video to video of each individual that passed away, that perished on 9/11, and they show pictures, and they have family members coming on to talk about the person, where they're at, what they did, their life story. And I sat there and watched it for over an hour because I wanted to let that sink in, to be able to remember some of the stories of these people. And what I found is that, a lot of them were just normal people like you and I. They're going to work. They've got a family. But yet they were making a difference in the world with their work and the connection they had with their friends and their family and the different work they did in the lives of the people around them, which is pretty amazing.
And I think, the one really lasting impact that it had that we didn't see coming was the appreciation for the first responders, the people who ran into a building that others were running out of, and the idea of going in to save people. So many of them did not get out.
When you and they had some of the videos. What's amazing to me when you listen to the commanders, there was no one that refused to do their duty.
Right. Yeah.
And can you imagine the weight that would be on your heart knowing that you're sending guys into a situation where they're not going to come back out of? They're going to die. And they knew that going into it they were going to die, but it was their sworn duty to serve and to protect. And they wanted to try and do whatever they could to save as many lives as possible.
Yeah.
That type of courage is beyond my understanding.
Terrible.
So that was really good. And then they've added some to the memorial since I was there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they have a bigger breakdown on the different individuals who partook in the terrorist acts. You find out the amount of time and effort and work that they put into learning how to become pilots, trying to fly under the radar to avoid detection. The amount of money that was spent. That was a well planned out attack, unfortunately. So you find that out, and it just makes you more angry that they would be willing to go through with something like that. The sheer terror.
Yeah, it also makes you more worried about things like that happening in the future. I know the CIA or the FBI just recently, a few days ago, said that they uncovered a plot where somebody was going to try and do some sort of act of terrorism where a lot of people were going to die. And it's just constant surveillance that's keeping us free from things like that.
It's amazing how they're able to pick up on that kind of stuff. The biggest thing I was thinking about when I was in there, and it's a horrific thought, but I just can't imagine being on an airplane. Can you imagine being on a plane and you see the plane heading towards a building and you know you're done? Can you imagine the fear and the terror that goes through your mind and your heart when you see that? I can't imagine it. And the images of the planes just smashing into the buildings, you see it and it's almost like it's not even real because it's so horrific.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And then the reaction of the people on the ground. There was even one story of some lady that I learned that I saw in the video in the memorial where, she got hammered by a piece of falling debris.
Sure.
And there was one individual that came by to help the lady, and she ended up being okay. He got her the help she needed to get to the hospital, but she got diced up, had massive wounds because of falling debris from the planes after they smashed into the buildings.
It's amazing more of that didn't happen.
I think it was the landing gear that fell on top of her leg.
Oh, my.
Can you imagine that? Or hearing the thumps and knowing what it is, that it's people bailing out.
Bodies hitting the ground, right?
And hard, too. And it's not like, you know how it is. And there were some of the people that talked about it in their eyewitness account where when you jump from that high, the damage is extreme.
Oh.
It's horrific. I just can't imagine that. And even the images from afar when you see the planes, hammer into the buildings, it's like, did that really just happen? Or being the helicopters flying around and monitoring the situation and seeing people crying for help and you can't be there to help them?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Or making the final phone call to your family knowing that you're probably done, but you just want to let them know that you love them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully we'll never experience anything quite like that again.
No kidding.
Well, is that the worst thing in your life? Is it the Kennedy assassination? Is it that? What?
The Kennedy assassination was a real, real bad day, especially for young people like me. I was in high school. And Kennedy was a real figure among the younger people because he was finally a young president. Not young by our ages, but as young a president as we had to look up to, and very popular figure. And that was terrible. I have to tell you, Chad, the scariest moment of my life, though, was going in for a Army physical to go to Vietnam. And not knowing how that was going to come out and thinking the worst, which that's how I found out. I had never known that I had high blood pressure. But they wanted to get a blood sample from me, and they pricked my finger, and the blood shot halfway across the room. But I was so geeked up that day and nervous, filled with anxiety, that they took my blood pressure. It was crazy. They said, well, we'll bring you back in a month. And in that intervening month, I tried to get a job in the summer working for the railroad where my dad worked, and they took a back x-ray and found out about the idea that I had a few missing vertebrae in my back. And I was able to send those to the draft board, and they said, no, I was classified 1Y, which means if the Vietnamese are marching down Broadway, I would have to go down and help, but otherwise not fit for active service. I was very fortunate because I had many friends go over.
My dad, he shared the story with me a couple of times. He was on a camping trip with his sister Elaine and her husband, my Uncle Gordon, and my mom was there. And he said they were all huddled up in the pickup truck listening on the radio to see if their number had been called.
That's when they had the tests, yeah. And if you had they had a test. If you had a certain score, you could stay in college. Then after that, they just went with a straight lottery. And in the lottery, I would have been right on the border. I don't know if it would have been called or not. But you just didn't want to go. Nobody wanted to go.
So Kennedy assassination, Vietnam, the Challenger, 9/11. Those are kind of the four.
Yeah, those are the ones that I think of. Bobby Kennedy assassination was real bad too. After Jack Kennedy gets it, then Bobby gets it.
Horrible.
And Bobby was going to be the nominee. He was on his way.
All right, we'll keep things rolling. We're going to come back, and we'll dive in on the Ducks. Justin Hopkins of Scoop Duck, who's on top of everything. We'll get his impression on the Ducks through 2 weeks. What's it going to take to get the offensive line on track? And what does he think about Oregon State? You got the Rip City Drive. voting for Trump just to spite you now. My vote does not matter in Washington, I can tell you that much. All right, joining us right now is one of our favorites from Scoop Duck. You got to check out scoopduck.com, you Duck fans. All the information on the team, on the players, on recruiting, and it is specialized in great content all the time. Justin Hopkins is back on the Rip City Drive. Justin, before we get to football, man, tell us about that awesome story with your son and Damian Lillard. You were posting pictures about it.
Yeah, pretty random. Tucker, my middle son, was fortunate enough to actually his high school soccer team, played in an inaugural Monday Night Lights soccer game on PK Park on Providence Park Monday. So being a 4-hour drive by car, obviously much longer than a bus, the team left early and went up to Portland to kind of get ready for the game. And the coach felt like it would be a good idea to go to Washington Square, for the boys to walk around, kind of stretch their legs a little bit and all that kind of stuff. So anyways, my son was with a couple of teammates, and obviously, there's Dame Lillard. And they caught him right as he was walking into a store. I believe it was a shoe store, according to the story. And Dame was real cool. They were like, hey, Dame, can we get a picture? And he goes, hey, guys, I'll make you a deal. Let me go into the store and do my thing. And when I come out, I will take a picture with you guys, no problem. And just give me a few minutes. Just let me go shop. They were like, yeah, no problem. So he did. He came out and instantly got ready. And first thing, like, why aren't you guys in school? I know it's a Monday. Why aren't you guys in school? And they kind of explained to him what was going on. And he was like, man, that's really cool. Lucky for you guys. And was really, interacting with them really well. So took a few pictures, and they invited him to the game, of course. And, he obviously wasn't able to make it. But by all accounts, the kids were just, super thrilled to meet him. And he was super, super cool about it, which I really appreciate.
We hear stories like that all the time, Justin. It's really nice to hear about a player who doesn't even play for this team anymore, still around. That's great.
You know what's awesome,
Yeah.
Justin? Your son and his friends, they're going to remember that for the rest of their lives.
Oh, yeah, because, you think about it. You're a 17-year-old kid, 16, 17. You basically go play in the first ever high school game on PK Park, on Providence Park, and something that they're doing now. You were the first game from Southern Oregon, and you got to meet Dame earlier that day just on luck. So, yeah, pretty complete day for those guys.
All right, Justin, let's get into it now. I want you to tell me, after further review, looking back at the first two games, what's your opinion? How do you feel about their struggles in the first two games?
Well, I really wish they stopped making mistakes and shooting themselves in the foot. That certainly seems to be something that's plaguing this team. I just remember, when Chip Kelly was here, always talking about self-inflicted wounds, and that's really what Oregon's done here. I think there's a really good team out there. There's a ton of talent. I think there's a better offense than we're seeing. I think the defense has been pretty good, but put in some really bad situations. But I think if you're Dan Lanning, you're sitting at home every night figuring out how to reduce those penalties and stop those mistakes and, a few alignment things and things like that. And, unfortunately, the biggest problem is the window's closing on the time that they have to fix those mistakes, unfortunately.
We're talking with Justin Hopkins, Scoop Duck here on the Rip City Drive. All right, with the offensive line issues, before the season began, when you were on the show, you talked about one of your biggest concerns was just the overall depth up front on the offensive line. Why is that the case? Why would a team like Oregon that recruits so well have such an issue with quality depth up front?
Yeah, that's a really good question, right? And I think we'd all love to get maybe like the direct answer from Lanning on that, which he's not capable of doing, and I understand why. I just think that, Oregon has done a pretty good job recruiting on the offensive line. One thing that's kind of escaped them, there's been kind of one signature win, if you will, which is, Josh Connerly, one of the tackles on the offensive line currently. But, when Mario Cristobal was here, to his credit, they had some really big signings. Penei Sewell's obviously one of them. Oregon was in the game for Kelvin Banks, who's now, an elite guy for Texas and was committed to Oregon at the time. Obviously changed his mind when Mario left for Miami. Just getting like that hallmark signature big, one or two recruiting guys has really been a problem. And I think there was a lot of issues there in the transition because when, Mario left, some of the offensive linemen didn't stick around for Lanning. It is what it is. And so it's just kind of been this weird time. And I will say this, you can supplement a lot of things in the transfer portal, and you can get offensive linemen in the portal, but it still doesn't fix that remedy of having them gel and having them build that chemistry and kind of develop together, because that's really a group that needs, 1, 2, 3 years together. So I just think it's kind of almost like an unperfect storm, if you will, and it's really hitting Oregon hard this year. If they can get a couple guys back, we're looking at Matthew Bedford and Dave Iuli looking like they might be back soon. We can take a look again at what this offensive line looks like, but it's certainly been the focal point of what we're all talking about these first couple weeks.
All right, so when those guys return, do you expect to see a significant improvement in terms of the play and the protection and the run blocking and the continuity?
Well, I'd like to believe so, and for me, if I'm being honest, how much difference can one guy make, right? And I'm really asking that question rhetorically, because you think 1 out of 5 guys, all right, how much difference will it make? But does it allow them pushing Poncho back to center, which we saw in the second half when Poncho was Yapani Lulu, Poncho is what they call him, when he was playing center. Oregon, was a little bit more consistent in the second half and looked a little better from an offensive line standpoint. So, to ask, normally I'd say it's probably not going to make that big of a difference, but it really looks like, given the fact that he was a starter last year and is going to be a major contributor when he's healthy this year, and the fact that it allows them to move some guys around back to maybe more natural positions, I think it's going to be a strong help. Now, is it going to be a strong help on the first snap, on the first game right out of the gate? Probably not. That's going to take a game, 2 games, a series or 2, a half, to just really kind of build, right? I think you'll see incremental improvements. So if a Duck fan that's just kind of casually watching and sees, oh, I see Matthew Bedford back out there, we're good, you're probably going to be better, but it's going to be a process, right? Don't expect it on snap 1 of game 1.
Justin, how do you feel about Dylan Gabriel after the first 2 games?
I'll say this. We were really spoiled with Bo Nix last year, right? And it's a reminder, and it's not a knock on Dylan Gabriel. I just think he had something really special in Bo. We know the season. We know how efficient he was. I think Dylan Gabriel does some things really well. I think he does things differently than Bo. We're not quite at that efficiency level that Oregon saw under Bo Nix. But I think the deep ball is getting there. They're able to kind of do things a little bit differently with him than they could with Bo. And I think until you get some of these problems solved from a consistent basis on the offensive line, I'm almost kind of a jury still out kind of guy on Dylan Gabriel, right? I'm not ready to write him off. I do think there's areas where he can improve. I do think there are reasons where the offensive line can improve those areas as well. So, Oregon, obviously, we know it's the Civil War this week. There's going to be a lot on stake for this game. And I've kind of been saying, at least on Scoop Duck, if the players can't get up for this game and kind of get, real hungry and ready to win against Oregon State, I'm not necessarily sure who they'll be able to do that against. So I'm really hoping that we can see maybe a little bit more fire from this group this weekend.
Hey, Jay, how bizarre is it to talk Civil War in September?
It's weird, but reading or watching interviews with the players after practice, and they've mentioned how different it is, but still they're feeling kind of that rivalry week kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And so, and then we got the Apple Cup too, so the same weekend. So yeah, it's really weird, but at the end of the day, let's be honest, it's so much better to have this game than to not have this game at all. That's for sure.
There's no question about it. How do you think Oregon State matches up based on the way Oregon's playing right now?
Well, I think if you're Oregon State, you see an Oregon team that really hasn't, played well, if you're being honest in it. And, Oregon State's also 2-0, so give them credit. I think that they're probably looking at what Boise State did to Oregon, and that is lean heavily on the run game. Clearly Boise State had Genty, who's a phenomenal running back. And I know the Beavers lean heavy on their run game. So I'm sure they're going to attack that as much as they can and see if they're able to, exploit Oregon's defense in that same way. And let's be real. So far in 2 games, you've seen the defensive game plan for the opposition dial up pressure and go after the quarterback and see if the offensive line can block you or stop you. And so I would expect if you're Oregon State, you're saying, hey, we're going to pin our ears back and probably blitz a little bit more than we would normally like to do. And if I was the head coach of the Oregon State Beavers, that's the game plan I draw up, because talent for talent, you shouldn't be able to keep up with Oregon. But as we can see, the Ducks are kind of shooting themselves in the foot and somewhat eliminating some of that talent, advantage they have.
What do you think of the Beavers so far, Justin, given the fact that they had a lot of rebuilding to do, including the coaching staff and the roster after what happened last year? How do you feel about them now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a traditional kind of person, right? I still like to have turkey on Thanksgiving and do those kind of traditions. And, I missed the Pac-12 and I wish it could have stayed around. And I've always been a big fan of, what Jonathan Smith was able to do at Oregon State in his time there. I thought he did more with less, probably as good as anyone in the country. And it certainly looks like they've kind of continued that this year. I think the Beavers are playing well. I think they probably enter this game with some confidence, knowing that Oregon just isn't playing, up to the standard or up to its level right now. So, they got a shot to go 3-0. I don't know about you guys, but I was, completely shocked to see the opening line from Vegas only be at 14 points in this game, because I think most of us, if we would have just guessed, back in August, we would have expected this to be around 24, 27 points, something like that. And here we are. Even Vegas has this thing as a couple touchdown game. So I think if you're Oregon State, you don't have anything to lose. Why not just go out and see what happens?
When you look across the country, it appears there's a clear separation between Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, and the rest of the country. Do you see it that way right now?
Yeah, I do. I think you look at Georgia. I felt like they were the most complete team heading in here. I think Texas has surpassed Ohio State currently with how they've played. I think Ohio State is maybe a smidge ahead of Oregon right now, playing better ball overall, but still some concerns there offensively. And then I've felt, my personal opinion, and I see some others kind of catching on now. And you got to watch out for Ole Miss. I mean, Lane Kiffin's got himself a heck of a team down there as well at Ole Miss. They're putting up points and keeping points off the board. So I will say this though, in closing, or whatever about Oregon. If you go and you look at Oregon just on a pure talent standpoint, they have as much talent on their roster as those teams. It's going to come down to a matter of playing like you have the talent and getting those guys to play up to that level.
Justin, there's one thing that I've wondered about watching Oregon this year so far. I think they have pretty good team speed, and it was kind of believed that they did. I just don't think they're taking advantage of it. When I see them try to throw deep, I see their receivers just running right by DBs. I thought I'd see more read option given the quarterback and the kind of speed the running backs have. Do you feel they're holding anything back? Are we seeing everything they have, or how do you feel about that situation?
No, I wondered the same as you, right? Is it Dan Lanning being a little bit conservative, maybe, not playing as many guys as usual so they can preserve red shirts, different, longer season, all that comes into play. And, it's been interesting. And I think that we've seen the offense kind of open up at times. And obviously last week, the bigger plays to Evan Stewart and some of the other receivers, which were nice. But yeah, it's just, consistency hasn't been there. Obviously, the offensive line is a problem, and I hate to pinpoint on those guys because there's no doubt they're out there working hard and don't want to hear that. But, I mean, I think if you're Dylan Gabriel, you're having, trouble trusting that you can drop back and stay back there for 3 or 4 seconds to make some of those throws. I think there's a little bit of a nuance here between Will Stein and Dylan Gabriel maybe getting comfortable with each other and kind of knowing what each other's strengths and weaknesses are, because as we know, that's a huge job of the OC, right? Knowing the limitations or the strengths and weaknesses of your quarterback, and then obviously scheming around that. So I think we're kind of seeing them, continue to evolve there. And at the end of the day, you look at this Oregon team, and it really is just that close to being almost all execution based and them being able to take that next step. But, at the end of the day, these are, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids, and you've got to trust that they're in the mental mindset to kind of take that leap and be confident and be able to move forward. And hopefully the Ducks open it up this week, because I know that would quiet a lot of critics for sure if they were able to put a pretty big win against Oregon State.
All right, go to Scoop Duck right now, Duck fans. You can get access to Ducks Only Forum, recruiting and sports, exclusive premium content from Justin, from Max Torres, and the rest of the staff. And you can do it for just $4.99 a month and have the most insight and the best coverage on the Ducks and the recruiting and everything they're trying to build right now in Eugene. Hey, Justin, man, thanks for putting those pictures up of your son. We think it's freaking awesome, and we love talking ball with you. Enjoy the game this weekend, buddy.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Love being on.
You got it. There's Justin Hopkins, Scoop Duck. pretty sweet story about his son, man.
Great
Waited
story.
patiently. Dame was cool to them, and they even invited him to the game, which is cool.
Yeah, it is. I'm glad that he posted that because word like that needs to get around. I think it encourages other players. It's like, maybe you could up your game a little bit when you run into a bunch of kids.
I agree. We spend a lot of time criticizing athletes, but it's nice that they get the love that they deserve when they take the time to.
Yeah.
Because those kids, they run into a guy like Dame and he treats them like that. They're going to remember it forever. They're Dame fans for life now.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But if you listen to the tone of Justin, like he's not very optimistic. It didn't sound like in regards to the offensive line really being able to step it up, even when they get the guys back.
Well, I think it was interesting, too. He thought about the emotion of this game. And if you can't get up for this game, who can you get up for? I've often wondered, though, Chad, maybe your opinion's different. When I see a team recruiting players from all over the country, they got guys coming in from everywhere. And a lot of them, it's their first time at Oregon. There's no way they can have a feel for this game the way I have growing up with this state, or a lot of kids from Oregon playing in this game have that emotion. I don't think they can have that emotion. I don't think they're as emotional about it.
No, especially when their head coach came over from Georgia.
Right.
He doesn't care about the Civil War.
You wonder about that, don't you?
I do. Yeah, it's different. When it goes to certain games like Ohio State and Michigan, you better care about that game or you're going to get fired.
Yeah. Well, the whole country knows about those games. You know?
Oklahoma, Texas, you better care about that game or you're going to get fired. I think with Oregon and Oregon State, you're right. As more people come into the program who aren't a part of the state or haven't been around or been attached to it, or maybe they're just new to the program, it doesn't have the same feel. Now, if you come in, you're recruited, you come in young, and you've had a chance to play 2 or 3 years against that school, then all of a sudden it starts to matter. But I think for a guy like Joey Harrington, who grew up here,
that's
watched
a great
the game,
example. Great example.
and then played in the game, that matters to him more than it does any other game because he understands the true importance of having bragging rights over that squad.
Yeah, no question. And the Oregon guys, no matter where they're from, if they were on that team 2 years ago when they played at Reser and lost, they've got a different feeling about that game.
There's no question, especially, you get hammered in the fourth quarter physically and you can't stop the run. You want some revenge. All right, big thanks to Justin Hopkins. Aaron Fincher is going to swing by and join us coming up at 5:20. We'll come back and hear from Sark. He's got some insight on the Longhorns, on what it takes to avoid that Notre Dame letdown that we saw against Northern Illinois. That's coming up next. All right, Godfather. I'll tell you one thing. I would not want to be a college football coach trying to prepare my team for a dangerous but lesser opponent. I don't know how these guys do it because, kids are kids.
Yeah.
And in my experience, a lot of times they kind of tune out parents or coaches or whatever the situation may be, don't they?
Well, you just got back from Michigan where everybody was telling you after the game how great you are, and you're reading how great you are. And, oh, by the way, yeah, at that age, I think players listen to their coach on the field. As far as all that off the field stuff, now they don't listen to their coaches any more than they listen to their parents, which is probably infrequently.
No doubt about it. Steve Sarkisian, head coach at Texas, he's had a great turnaround after some personal struggles.
Yeah.
And he's got the Longhorns on track, unfortunately, because I hate Texas, but, man, he's a good coach. And they got a lot of talent down there, and they're definitely one of the best teams in the country. They're coming off to win over Michigan, and now they are going to play UTSA, University of Texas San Antonio, who's coming off a rough loss to Texas State. What a lot of people don't realize, UTSA and Texas State are not, well-known schools around the country, but because of their location, the one advantage they have, there's a lot of talent, football talent in the state of Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times these other bigger schools like Texas, or it could be Texas Tech or one of the other schools there in the state, they'll miss out on certain guys or they'll fill up on the guys they want. And Texas State and UTSA are able to scoop in or swoop in and gobble up some of the crumbs, and they end up with some good talent.
Yeah.
Players that turn out to be something. And as you know, you mentioned this earlier, but Will Stein, offensive coordinator at Oregon, was at UTSA.
Yeah.
With a pretty good squad with a lot of talent.
That year he was there, that last year, they were really good.
Here's Coach Sarkisian talking about the task at hand, and then he's asked a great question by one of the guys covering the press conference. Take a listen.
Proud of our guys, and heading into this week, we know we have a dangerous opponent. The worst opponents or the toughest opponents to play are the ones that are wounded, that are backed into a corner. And UTSA has got a very talented team. Really well coached. Coach Traylor's done a nice job there, and they're a little wounded coming out of last week, so we know we're going to get their best shot. We're going to get their best version, and so we got to prepare really well this week, like we have the previous 2 weeks, in knowing that we're going to get their best shot. We need to ensure that they get our best shot.
Coach, you just were talking about that. How do you prevent what happened to Notre Dame, what almost happened to OU? Is it something you drive in the players' minds every day, that things can happen in college football, that losses can happen?
Well, twofold. I think one is we try to hold ourselves to our standard. We have a saying around here, the standard is a standard. And a jersey, a helmet, a stadium doesn't dictate how we prepare. We dictate how we prepare. I think that's the first part. But the second part is human nature is human nature. And so what did I do this morning? I walked them through the Notre Dame scenario of them going into College Station a week ago and winning that game and being anointed a top 5 team and in the college football playoff, and a week later losing to Northern Illinois. And so I showed that clip of the field goal, and I showed the clip of Northern Illinois storming the field this morning as a good reminder that we are entitled to nothing. We're capable of anything. We've got a really good team, but we're entitled to nothing, and we're going to earn everything we get, and we're going to have to earn the victory here Saturday night.
I like that he answered that so clearly. And not only that, but he's addressed it with his team. Like, look what happened to Notre Dame.
Yeah. Showed him tape and everything.
I wonder how much of his players were listening during that discussion. Dude, we're not losing to Texas State. We're not losing to UTSA. Come on, Coach.
Yeah.
We just whacked Michigan. What are you talking about?
We're going to coast through this.
You see what we did in the big house, Coach? Get out of here.
Yeah.
And do you know players think that? Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
That's the scary part. Is how can you not look at the matchup on paper and think, dude, we got this? We're going to kick their ass.
You know they're saying that too. Yeah, they're just that guy the guy playing third string tackle is thinking, I'm going to get some time tonight. I'll be playing in this game. They're all thinking that. You know what? I'll go out and give it a half. I'll probably be done in a half. We'll have a good enough lead. I can sit out second half. That's the kind of thinking that goes on in games like that.
And then before you know it, UTSA is lining up for a field goal late in the game to win it.
Yeah, that's right.
Because you know that Notre Dame thought the same thing. Freeman was probably trying to, hey, guys, this is a dangerous game. They're all like, what? Get out of here.
Yeah.
They're coming into South Bend. They've never been here before. They're not beating us. We're a 28-point favorite.
We won the national
Oops.
championship last year. We got to lose to these chumps.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But that's the situation they're in. But just keep an eye on that. The other game to watch is tomorrow night. Arizona State off to a 2-0 start, and they look great. They hammered Wyoming, and they curb stomped Mississippi State, and they got 262 yards from Cam Scattaboo. And if you haven't watched Scattaboo run the football, you should. He is an aggressive bowling ball type product. He's awesome. They traveled to Texas State for a short week on the road to Texas State. They're a small favorite, and they're playing a team that just dropped the hammer on UTSA. That is a dangerous football game.
Yeah.
Very dangerous, because the following week they play their first conference game on the road against Texas Tech. Short week, Texas State, good football team, a lot of talent, and you got a team feeling pretty saucy after back-to-back wins over Wyoming and Mississippi State.
Do you think Dillingham's having any trouble convincing his guys that they could lose this game?
He's definitely going through the process of trying to convince them, but just like every other team, you got guys who are thinking, come on, man.
Yeah. What
Texas
are you talking
who?
about?
This isn't Texas, it's Texas State.
Texas State. I've never even heard of them. Texas State.
Come on, coach.
We knew Texas was a state, but Texas State is a college?
They have a school? We're playing them?
Crazy.
You know, that's the way kids think, because when my parents would try to drill home certain critical points, I'd be like, in my mind, like, whatever.
Is that the school that the guy? Remember that series on TV?
Yeah, coach.
Coach?
Minnesota State,
Minnesota
which didn't,
State,
which
okay.
doesn't
Same
exist.
thing. Yeah, of course.
It could have been Texas State.
Yeah. Texas State. Yeah, we're going to worry about Texas State.
That was one of my dad's favorite shows right there, Coach.
Was it?
Yeah, with Dauber. It was a good
Yeah,
one.
it was a good show.
A good show. All right, we'll keep things rolling here on the program. And then we'll come back and share some of our visions on the Civil War. And then Aaron Fincher is going to join us at 5:20. You got the Rip City Drive. What's up, my friends? 5 o'clock. We start with college football, where we have Civil War Saturday in September. Oregon and Oregon State from Corvallis, Research Stadium, kickoff at 12:30. The pregame's at 10:30 on your home of the Beavs, 1190 KX. Mike Parker will have the call. Aaron Fincher is going to stop by in 20 minutes to talk Oregon and Oregon State. The Dolphins and Patriots meet up tomorrow in Miami on Prime Video. Kickoff at 5:15. Dolphins a 2.5-point favorite. Both teams 1-0 after Buffalo topped Arizona and Miami came back to defeat Jacksonville. Bengals are looking to rebound after their Week 1 loss to New England. They play at Kansas City Sunday, 125 kick. Joe Burrow says his wrist not impacting any of his throws. Mariners start today's actions, 4.5 games back in the West. They meet the Padres tonight. First pitch at 6:40. Brian Wu gets the call. The Astros have dropped back-to-back games. They host the A's. All right, Godfather. Aaron Fentress is coming up in 20 minutes. We'll get his take on the Civil War coming up on Saturday, and also get his thoughts on the Chicago Bears, who got the win in Week 1 over Tennessee, even though they didn't get a lot of support from their new quarterback, Caleb Williams. So we'll talk to him about the Bears as well. And the game's going to be on Saturday. Kickoff at 12:30, pregame at 10:30 on your home of the Beavs, 1190 KEX. So how you feeling about this game on Saturday? It's so weird to get this game in September because, both teams have played 2 games. Both teams have 2 wins, but the competition that each team has faced is not the best. So it's really hard for me to have a great feel on what to expect on Saturday.
I think it's a tough one anyway. We just haven't seen enough of either one of them. And I think, especially with Oregon, we haven't seen what we expected to see. And how long that's going to go on, we don't know. For me, I'm just kind of picking this week as a week where I think the Ducks will play with more of a sense of urgency. I think they'll have some things straightened out, maybe get a couple injured players back. And I think they'll explode on Oregon State. I think they'll beat the spread handily, I'd say. I think Oregon State's going to win by 20+.
Oregon State or Oregon?
Oh, I'm sorry. I said Oregon State. Oregon is going to win by 20+. My bad.
All right. Right now, the current line, it opened up at 20.5, and it's been bet down at most books. It's either 16 or 16.5.
Yeah. It was, like Justin said, it was at 14, I think, on Sunday or Monday, when I checked it out. But I think people bet that back up again to 16.
I have no feel. I really don't know what to expect. I don't expect Oregon to play great football because they haven't shown me enough with their offensive line to believe that those issues are going to be resolved to the point where they're going to have great balance on offense. And if Oregon is one-dimensional again, Trent Bray is a darn good football coach, and he's going to have his team ready to be able to deal with that. But on the flip side, I know Oregon State can run the football, but can they get enough in their passing game to move the chains when necessary? Because my guess is they're not going to be able to line up and just run it every down and go for 230, 240 on the ground against Oregon. So at some point, McCoy's going to have to be able to deliver the football on time, on target, and move the chains through the air to get first downs, keep the clock moving. And there's going to have to be some form of bounce for Oregon State. And I don't know if they can do it because I've only seen them play 2 games against Idaho State and San Diego State. And the offense against San Diego State wasn't exactly electric. Let's just put it that way. Right?
Yeah,
But I think Oregon State is better than what we thought. They're
for sure.
Much better operation. I love their offensive coordinator. Trent Bray's done a good job. They're much more buttoned up than what I had envisioned when the massacre took place. Jonathan Smith rolls. They're out of the conference. They're in no man's land with Washington State. Everyone spelled doomsday, but it's not doomsday because they're a respectable football team.
They are. Now, I picked the game, but if you said now you have to go out and bet the game, I would refuse to do that. I don't trust either team in a game like this to win the game enough to put money on it. I just wouldn't. I'd sit this one out.
I just think if you're laying the points with the Ducks, that's risky business based on
Yeah.
their performance so far.
Yeah. Yeah. But, when you look at the talent gap between the two teams, at some point, isn't that talent going to pop up? Isn't it going to show itself?
Well, it didn't against Idaho.
Yeah.
And it didn't against Boise State.
Yeah.
So when is it going to take place?
I'm saying this week. I don't know.
And we don't know what the status is of Bedford and the rest of the offensive linemen. If I knew that they had their horses up front, I may look at the game a little bit differently. But based on if they go out there without Bedford and they're shuffling around the interior of their offensive line, that's a problem because Oregon State's good enough defensively to create some problems. And if you get Dylan Gabriel in a situation where he's one-dimensional, that's anytime a defense knows what's coming, it's much easier to deal with.
Yeah, for sure.
But if they're running the football with success and then the play action comes into the game, then that just changes everything. But I don't know. It's going to be fun to watch. I want to see how Oregon State responds. We're going to learn a lot about Oregon State this weekend for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would say this: Oregon State will have the emotion on their side. They have the motivation to go out there and prove themselves. I think for Oregon right now, they're just searching for their soul, trying to figure out who they are.
Yeah.
And a win will be more of a relief for them. But if Oregon State goes in there and pulls out the win, their season's complete. It'd be the biggest win for the Beavs in the history of the Civil War, in my opinion, based on the circumstances around it.
Yeah.
Don't you think that it would be one of the most incredible wins in their school's history based on the circumstances?
One of them, yeah, probably not the most, but, because the 3-0 win over USC that year with O.J. Simpson, that was a big one when they were number one ranked in the country.
Or the upset of Washington up at Husky Stadium back in, 85?
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty surprising as well.
They've had some good wins over the course of their time. I just think, I don't know. They got to win over a Big Sky team and win over a Mountain West team. Okay. I don't know what that means.
It means nothing. That's what it means.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, it means
and they're
nothing.
playing a Big Ten team. Not necessarily a great Big Ten team right now, but a Big Ten team.
And Oregon's 2 wins mean nothing either. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Idaho and Boise,
Right.
whoopity-doo.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean anything. You won the game, and that's what matters. The good thing for the Ducks is you don't have to look pretty right now. And with the 12-team playoff, you don't have to win every one of your games. Their main focus right now is whatever it takes to get the offensive line to gel and play better football. Because if they don't get that figured out at some point this year, they're in trouble. Like, that's a definite problem now. Because you got to have balance. They couldn't run the football last week or the week before. That's not Oregon offense. They need to have balance. The passing game is not nearly as effective when teams know you can't run the ball. Because the play action, the read option, all that stuff just doesn't have the same pop to it.
Yeah, I just don't understand their inability to run, too. That's very surprising to me.
I would say this, Oregon State's offensive line has been impressive. That
sure.
could end up being a strength. That battle up front between, I'll just call it right now, that's the most important battle. The line of scrimmage will determine the outcome in this game. Plus, I want to see can the Beavs play clean football and not turn it over? I don't know. I just don't know what to expect from McCoy. I have no idea. I know what Dylan Gabriel is going to give me. Good decision-making, accurate passes, because I know what he's about. But I haven't seen McCoy in this type of game.
Yeah.
This is the biggest game of his career.
Yeah, and Oregon State's going to try and run the ball, and it's going to be interesting to see if they can hold on to the ball because they're going to get hit harder than they've been hit by the likes of San Diego State.
There's no question. But if they run the ball for 200-plus, they're going to win the game. I do believe that. If the Ducks can't stop them up front, the Beavs are able to run the football with authority, that's how they're going to get the job done. I think the number Brendan said was 150. I think they need over 150 rushing yards to be able to win the game. You got to be able to control the clock and shorten the game. And if they do that, look the heck out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I'll tell you what, if they give up 150 to 200 yards rushing against Oregon State, I hate to think to what some of those Big Ten teams are going to do to them, and not just Ohio State. there's some other teams. If they're going to be that bad against the run, they're going to have a lot of trouble all year.
Well, all right. So in the week 1 game against Idaho, they put up 49 yards on the ground. Awful. So
Wow.
I'm talking about the Vandals only had 49 yards rushing. So the
Yeah.
Ducks were able to,
Yeah,
play
they
a good
were
game
able-
up front.
Yeah. I
Now
didn't
against
realize
Boise
that
State
low.
with the best running back, Jonte, Boise State in the game finished with 221 yards rushing, a 6.7 yard average. Jonte had 192 yards.
Most of them.
Yeah. So that's where it's at. And Oregon State's been a dominant run team so far. And they've got good play from the offensive front. This is a game Oregon should win. If they were to lose the game, it would be we talk about how great it'd be for Oregon State. Can you imagine if Dan Lanning loses another one to Oregon State, how bad that would get? I mean, seriously, how bad would that be if they lose to Oregon State this year, in this moment, in this spot, in the Big Ten, and you can't get out of non-conference play without getting beat, and you lose to Oregon State? Be one of the worst losses in their school's history.
How far would they drop in the rankings? Goodness sakes.
And Mike Parker yesterday telling us that he's been a part of the Civil War. He's been at every Civil War game for 52 years consecutive.
Yeah.
And
He's
as you
seen a
pointed
lo-
out,
He's seen a lot of bad football. Say that for him, because not all those games were very good.
a lot of bad football games over the course of 52 years.
Yeah.
The best one I saw, the one a couple of years ago was epic, but that 98 game with Simonton, that game was money. That was a special one.
Yeah.
That was a good football game.
Yeah. I think a lot of Duck fans have that memory lapse where they don't remember those years and a lot of them are too young to remember them, but there were some years where the Ducks weren't very good. They were not very good.
When I moved out here, it was before Oregon had really turned the program around, so they were not a very good football team. And Oregon State was running the wishbone in the Pac-8.
Yeah, that was
with Jared Pettibone.
Yeah, that was not a good time.
No, because I came from Oklahoma, so I knew what wishbone offense looked like, and I saw Oregon State trying to run wishbone. I'm like, what is this? It's awful. Teams trying to run the wishbone without athletes is a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, they weren't very good. And I think he came after Joe Avazano, and that was not a pretty time either. I think he went 0 for 11 his first year, if I'm not mistaken. It was not fun. I had to cover that team.
We talked to Coach Bray earlier in the week. How much do you think he wants this game?
Oh, gosh. It's a career maker in a way. Yeah, that's one to hang his hat on for a long time.
He could walk in and demand that they up I think his average salary is about $1 million right now as a head coach.
Double it.
Yeah. Triple it. Quadruple it, please. He would have them eating out of his hands at that point.
Yeah.
All right, we'll come back and talk with Aaron Finchers. What's his take on the Ducks, and what does he see? Can they turn it around? Will they solidify things up front with the offensive line? We'll ask him about his Bears, too. The Bears. All right, if you're on hold, stay there. We'll get to your phone calls here in just a moment. And joining us right now is our good friend from the Oregonian, Aaron Fentress, is back to talk some football with us. And Aaron, I was just looking at the numbers. How stunning is it to you through 2 games to see the Ducks put up 107 yards on the ground against Idaho, 109 against Boise, and averaging right around 3 yards a carry?
Red flags all over the place with that. That is not good at all. They should be averaging 250 at least on the ground after 2 weeks. I'm all about improving and coaching and developing. And so I'm not going to say that they can't turn things around in that regard, but wow, that should not be a thing at all. You have bigger, stronger, faster, more athletic players across the board against both teams, and that shows up more in the trenches than anywhere else, where you should just absolutely steamroll through those 2 teams. So for me, that's a huge red flag moving forward for them. They have to fix that. You cannot go into the Big Ten against the run, which they were against Boise, and unable to run the ball effectively. Losses will be coming if that doesn't change.
Aaron, I'm curious what you think about their recruiting at offensive line. I'm surprised, first of all, they don't have more depth after all their recruiting successes. And number 2, they don't seem very good. And have we overestimated all of this? What's your take on all this? You're a football coach. You're a football player. What do you see when you look at them?
Oh, man, offensive line is a different planet. It really is. I was a receiver. I've dabbled in some O-line coaching as best I can. I've been around some good offensive line coaches and learned as much as I can. But you have to develop chemistry as a group. You have to be on the same page completely. And that stuff sometimes takes time to develop that. And when you're piecing in younger guys and then bringing in transfers and throwing them in there, it's not always going to come together right away. And so that's why I give them, the benefit of the doubt that they can probably, improve and get better as they go. But what I saw a lot of was just penetration from guys who shouldn't be talented enough to create the space they need to, and the leverage they need to get penetration, but more so because guys on the offensive line were not necessarily executing their assignments correctly, be it footwork, be it hand placement, be it just front recognition, to know who has whom, when, where, and how, and, how you're supposed to change. That sometimes changes based on the front. So that's what I saw. I just seemed like a lot of miscues because I didn't feel like that they were, getting necessarily beaten up physically, because I don't think Boise State and Idaho have those types of athletes as much as it was. They just didn't seem in sync.
We're talking with Aaron Fentress, Oregonian, here as we get ready for the Civil War coming up on Saturday, kickoff 12:30 from Corvallis. What are your thoughts on Dylan Gabriel through 2 weeks?
He's been fine. I mean, his numbers are solid. The big plays weren't there in the first game. That was one of the biggest red flags from that game, is that usually, actually last year against Florida State on 5 scoring drives, it took 21 plays, 5 touchdown drives. They had more than that, but just picking the first 5, it took 21 plays. Whereas against Idaho, it took them 43 plays to get the 4 scoring drives that they had, and one was a field goal because the big plays were there. Well, the big plays came back this past week, all 3, well, for the most part, well, not for the most part, partly. All 3 of their offensive touchdowns were set up or came about via the big play, but there weren't enough of them to rack up more points. And they ended up getting saved by the special teams, that produced 2 touchdowns. And so I think it's 9 sacks through 2 games, where I think they had 10 sacks through 2 years with Bo Nix, right? Is that correct? And part of that, I had this conversation last year with someone, and I said one of the things that's going to be interesting is that when you go from someone who I referred to numerous times as a Jedi in Bo Nix, because he was a 5th-year starter, which is not supposed to be a thing, right? If you give any great quarterback in the history of college football another year, they're going to put up dizzying numbers. But he did everything you would need a quarterback to do in almost every situation. So he's getting rid of the ball quickly. He's getting in and out of certain plays. And he's helping the offensive line, because if someone's going to come free or he knows it, the ball's gone, right? Or he's adjusting the protection to pick it up. Gabriel so far, and again, I'm not at their practices, right? I'm not watching the film, which I don't know every play call, but there's been some instances where teams have brought pressure, and it's not always the offensive line's fault. If guys are coming out, if backers are coming, or more than one backer's coming, or a safety's coming, the back tight end has to be involved, or it's on the quarterback. He has to take account for, okay, if that guy's coming free, I've got to get rid of the football. And if I don't have a guy already running a hot route and I recognize someone's coming, then I probably need to make some type of check. So some of those sacks I don't believe were on the O-line or anyone other than him. So he's got to, grow into this offense as well. And remember, he's a transfer, right? This is his third program, so it's at least his third offense. And he's never played with any of these guys before. And so that takes time to develop as well. As much as the offensive line has to develop, he has to develop his knowledge of the offense, his communication, and chemistry with the receivers.
Aaron, you think the Ducks can get it fixed by the time Ohio State comes to town?
I would lean toward no if I were betting on it, because it's not that far out. They don't have huge tests between now and then. They have Oregon State off, UCLA, and then is it Ohio State or another game? Do you know off the top of your heads?
What they've got is they've got Oregon State, and then they'll take on UCLA, and then they play Michigan State before they take on Ohio State.
Oh, okay, all right. So yeah, not a lot of huge tests there. And Ohio State, we all know, is a different animal, right? If they smell some weaknesses on the field, man, they're going to be coming with far better athletes and players than what Boise and Idaho says or has. So I would say no, but I'll never forget the 2019 Pac-12 championship when the Ducks running game was good, but they went up against Utah. Utah had the greatest, run defense in the country. I think they were giving up 58 per game. The Ducks rushed for 280, right? So sometimes things can just get fixed in a way. But then the next week against Wisconsin, the Rose Bowl, they couldn't run the football, pass it at all. So matchup styles make fights. Right now, though, I just see too many weaknesses to believe that they're going to be able to handle it in Ohio State in just a month.
And what are your thoughts on what Coach Bray's done at Oregon State so far?
I like it. I like the shutout of San Diego State. I think that's, I don't know how good San Diego State is this year, but a shutout's a shutout. They're definitely playing hard, playing with a chip on their shoulder, playing with tenacity. The run game's been solid. And I think they're going to give the Ducks, they're going to give the Ducks some trouble. I have it 30-20, which, again, is not necessarily a scientific prediction, but I think it's going to be an interesting game. But, yeah, I like what they're doing. They're in such a tough situation. It's so difficult what has happened to them in Washington State. But at least through 2 weeks, the players who are there and the coaches who are there are embracing the challenge that they have before them, and they're putting their best foot forward.
Who's the best team in the country, Aaron?
Oh, man. I don't know. Do I have to answer that?
Yes, you have to answer it, or you're going to jail.
I have to?
Well, I mean,
who's right number one?
Well, we just see, for Dwight and I, we see three teams right now. It's Texas, Ohio State, and Georgia. They appear to be a cut above right now early in the season. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. So if I had to pick between the three, I guess I'd pick Georgia, Ohio State, Texas in that order, but I wouldn't hold myself to that.
All right, before you go, I got to ask you about the Bears. Week one, they got the victory over Tennessee. Caleb Williams looked like a rookie quarterback, which is okay, but how you feeling after one game with the Bears, buddy?
I think I've told you guys this before, right? I've checked out emotionally until they fix quarterback. And that has been so good for me because the last 3 years with Fields, I watch every game. I'm not emotionally involved. They lose, oh well. They win, oh great. Because to me, until they fix quarterback, I do not care. And I mean that. And what happened this week was classic Bears. You draft a so-called generational talent with the number one pick, and he goes out there with all these weapons they allegedly have and throws, was it 88 yards, 89, 90 yards? What was it? So it was under 100, right?
Yeah, it was under 100. It might have been less than that. Let me pull up the exact number, but it was rough for Caleb Williams.
And they win with a ridiculous pick six by just an unbelievable flip by Levis as he's falling, which was just idiotic. And they get a block punt. I'm just sitting there watching. I'm like, this is Lovie Smith 2005 all over again, right? This is how the Bears have been. Here's a crazy stat for you. So everyone knows that the Bears have never had a 3,000 or 4,000 yard passer, right? Closest 3,800 twice, Cutler and then Eric Kramer. But get this, they've never had a 30 touchdown passer.
Ever?
Think about that, ever.
Wow.
The closest is Kramer at 29 in 1995. Cutler had 29 once. I think Cutler had 27. And then Sid Luckman in 1943 had 28 in 10 games, which is crazy. 28 in 10 games in 1943. But here's another stat for you. The Bears have only had a quarterback throw for 25 or more touchdowns 12 times. And keep in mind, the Bears are a charter franchise. We're talking 100 years of football here. And they've only had someone throw for 25 touchdowns 12 times. So that's why I checked out. I just can't do it anymore. With Cutler, Grossman, Tom Zach, Harbaugh, all the different – Cutler was just so lazy and footwork so bad. And then Trubisky, oh, my God, that guy. Anything over the first read was a disaster. Fields was a running back. I just can't do it. I just can't go through that pain of watching a team that cannot operate the forward pass. So until they fix quarterback, I'll watch them. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to watch them, but I just don't feel any emotional tie to it. I just can't do it anymore.
All right. Aaron Finchers from the Oregonian. You got one more thing for him, Godfather?
Yeah, I do. Aaron and I
No
often.
Blazers?
No basketball.
Too early for that. No, we're not going there
Okay.
yet. But we talk golf once in a while, and I'm curious how your game is and whether or not you're beating your daughter. Is your daughter beating you regularly now?
Now, as soon as she took lessons her sophomore year, she started beating me.
That's
What
what
are you
I
talking
figured.
about?
For those
I
who
paid
don't
for a
know,
few-
she's a really good golfer, though, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, she played at she was 3-year varsity at Sunset and helped them finish third in state last year.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And she was their number 3 player. But yeah, no, so the running joke between us, and it's a joke on my side, but she gets irritated, is that when we play, I say, you have to give me strokes. And she is not about that at all. Because if I'm winning through 5 holes, like winning with the strokes, she gets irritated. I'm beating you for real, but why do I have to give you strokes? So what I have to do is I say, okay, you have to give me strokes, but if you beat me with my handicap difference, I'll give you some cash. That's the only way I can get her to do it. Otherwise, it's just not a fun 18 holes.
Are you
Unless
any
she's
good
winning,
now?
of course. No, I'm horrible. As a matter of fact, I've actually the last 2 weeks I've kind of tried to kick in more in terms of really trying to practice more and fix some things. I've been filming my swing, but it just doesn't come. I can putt pretty well, but everything else is just the instincts that come with the swing or learning the swing or developing the swing, it's just foreign to me. I'm always screwing up something. I'll concentrate on one thing and I'll screw up 5 other things.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to work on it.
All right, Aaron, we appreciate it, buddy. You're the best, man. Enjoy the games this weekend, and we'll talk basketball in the near future with you.
All right. Take care, guys.
Love it. There's Fentress here on the show. Telephone number 503-248-0620. Let's go out. We got a couple of people that want to talk Ducks. Let's start with Bruce. Hey, Bruce, welcome back to the show, my friend. What are your thoughts, your assessment of the Civil War coming up on Saturday?
Hey, Chad, Dwight. I concur with Dwight. I think the Ducks are going to put it together, the whole team, both sides of the ball, and roll Oregon State. I know Oregon State's licking their chops. The stadium's going to be full, but the students aren't back yet. But that usually doesn't mean much. But Reese's hard for us to play, you know. But I think if you look at last week's game, Boise State game, Oregon, in my opinion, started to click late in the fourth quarter. And if it weren't for that Herbert interception, you know, late in the game, I think the Ducks were going to cover the spread. And that interception led to 70 of Gente's yards, you know, right off the get-go. That next play, you know, he busted it for 70. But you watch the last couple drives of Boise State, and Oregon's D stepped up, and you know, it was like 3 and out, 4 and out. But I think Oregon is their O-line, I think, is going to finally start to click. They were looking a lot better late in that game last week. They still have a long way to go, like Fentress said. They ought to be putting up a couple hundred yards a game on the ground. And until they do that, you know, they're going to be bait for Ohio State. That's going to be a tough one. But they've got a whole month to prepare. They got to bye after this week, I think, kind of early in the season. But, you know, they can get it together, go down to L.A. and whoop on the Bruins, and then come home for Michigan State. So I have faith. I see good things happening this weekend for the Ducks.
You going down to the game?
I am not going this weekend. I was a little late getting tickets. They're standing room. Better on TV, I think, for this go around. I'll be there, obviously at all the home games for Oregon, but one of these days I'll have to get back to Reeser now that the stadium's done, and take a look at it. I hear it's pretty nice.
It is nice. Yeah, they did a good job with it. It's nice. But, dude, enjoy the weekend, man. Enjoy the game on TV, and we'll see how the Ducks do, buddy.
Thank you. Are you going down? I'm sure you're going to be there, right?
I'm not. I'm going to be hosting a Civil War party down at Spear Mountain.
Okay. I have to get down to one of those sometime, too. But I think I'll be enjoying it from my own couch in my living room.
Oh, that's nice, dude. That's the way to do it right there. There's Bruce. He thinks they're going to turn it around. I think the Godbrother is going to join me down at Spear Mountain this weekend.
Of course he is. Yes. You're giving away prizes, right?
Yeah, when he found out there was giveaways, he's like, I'm in. I'll see you there.
That's all he needs to hear.
Yeah, big shocker, huh?
Yeah.
Now let's go out to Tony down in Eugene. Tony, what's your assessment on the Ducks and the game coming up this weekend in the Civil War?
This is Tony from Vancouver.
Well, it says Eugene. Hey, Shacker.
Yeah, I know.
This is
Yeah.
my man, Tony.
I
Hey,
know.
Tony, how you doing, boss? Haven't talked to you in a while.
Long time no speak. Yeah, I got 2 points. One, you guys brought up Robert Kennedy. The White might know this. My father took me to the Robert Kennedy rally in 1968. I was 12 years old. And that
I
was at
didn't
the
know
old
you were
Gateway. That was at the old Gateway Shopping Center there in Portland with the big arch.
Yeah.
There's only a couple of things I remember. I remember the big arch, and I remember they were singing "This Land Is Your Land, This Land Is Robert Kennedy." That's the only thing I remember. The next day, he was assassinated.
Terrible.
So he went from Seattle to Portland and then to L.A.
Yeah, he did.
And my father told me about that. I was heartbroken. But getting back to the Ducks, they're not the only team that better watch out. Washington better watch out too. They're playing two teams not just with a chip on their shoulder. They've got an emotional, embarrassing chip on their shoulder. They were embarrassed by the Pac-12. They were embarrassed by the Power 5. That's going to be a whole different type of chip on their shoulder. And if these two teams ain't ready to play, I think they're going to get slam danced, both of them.
Washington
think, guys?
State's pretty good. I've seen them twice. I saw both their games. They can really move the football.
Yeah, so these teams better watch it. Yeah, I think they're going to be fired up. Thank you, guys.
You got it, Tony. Great to hear your voice. Yeah, I don't know what to expect. I have no idea. It's just hard for me to look at a team that's struggling and then say, yeah, they're just going to put it together magically this weekend. I can't say that. And with Oregon State, I just need to see more. I like the early returns with Trent Bray have been very nice. I like what they're doing defensively. I love the way their offensive line is playing. But, the game is still directed by quarterbacks, and I need to see what Giovanni McCoy is all about.
Yeah.
I have no idea. It's too early. This game being played in September has just messed me all up.
Well, it is too early. That's why, people betting on games this early when you don't have a lot of information yet, there's no data out there for you.
No. I need data.
Yeah.
I need data.
Yeah. You're an analytics guy, Chad.
Yeah. Do you like data, Shacker?
Yeah, especially next-gen stats data.
There you go.
Who is this? Sticks?
Peter
Oh, no.
Schilling, Major Tom.
Oh, yeah. That's a good song.
Hmm.
I haven't heard this song in a while. It's a good one. Nice work, Shacker.
I know what era of music you like. 70s, 80s.
Yeah, I do.
90s is too current.
The Super Bowl is never going to cater to my taste when it comes to their halftime show.
Another garbage halftime show. They haven't had a good one since Prince.
Like, if you had your pick, like, if you could go to Roger Goodell right now and say, this is who I want for the halftime show, who would you select?
Metallica.
Who?
Metallica.
Oh, Metallica. I don't know if that's going to happen.
All right, someone with guitar. I'll keep it vague. Let's get some guitars out there.
Well, I agree with that.
Metallica's big enough to where they would put on a good show.
Aren't we like 4 or 5 years in a row of rap? That ain't diverse. Diversity is about everything.
If they had a yacht rock review at the Super Bowl halftime show, I would fly in just to go watch the show. That's
That'd be
never
great.
happening.
Yeah, that's great music. It'll keep everyone happy.
All right, high fives. We'll hand out some high fives when we come back. All right, we're gonna get to the phone calls here in just a moment, but first things first, we have one high five to hand out tonight, and take a listen to this news report. Props to John Bon Jovi.
It's the case of being in the right place at the right time. New video shows the moment's music legend John Bon Jovi helped a distraught woman standing on the edge of the pedestrian bridge. News 2's Kenley Hargett is at the WKRN.com alert desk with the details. Kenley.
Yes, Kendall, Metro Police just released this video moments ago. John Bon Jovi was reportedly on the pedestrian bridge shooting a music video. Check this out. You see Bon Jovi there in the brown jacket next to his film crew. The woman is there near the corner of your screen in blue. She's on the outside of the rail looking down into the Cumberland below when Jovi seems to notice her and walks over. They wave at each other. They talk for nearly a minute. Then he and an unidentified woman reach out for her and help pull her back onto the bridge. Metro Police blurred her face to protect her privacy. From there, she and Bon Jovi speak for a while before embracing. Metro Police tell us a woman did go to the hospital for help afterward. If you or someone you know is struggling with suicidal thoughts, the 988 suicide hotline is available 24/7. You can call or text. Kendall?
How about John Bon Jovi getting it done?
Do you mean Bon John Jovi?
Yeah. There we
He's
go.
a man.
Nice work. Nice work, Bon Jovi. He's a man of the people, Shacker.
You think he said that? Take my hand, we'll make it, I swear.
Yeah. No, he sang it to her.
Let's go out to the phones. Glenn in Beaverton's got some Oregon State betting angles for us. Glenn, what's up? Welcome to the show. What are your thoughts on the Civil War?
Well, that's awesome. The Bon Jovi goes the high five. You guys are great for getting that. But hey, I know, Chad, I know you from being down south like your other job. You know, we talked a few times. I haven't been down there lately. And I know Dwight. I know Robbie Trevor and Jeff Otterson knows. I'm friends with you on Facebook. You guys are talking about the Civil War. You got me all fired up.
Okay,
the
good.
Beavers is making me believe you put some money on the money line, put the cash on the money line for the Beavers. They hold them, beat them straight up. They beat them. How much is that going to pay?